I get what you just said, but what you just attributed to me is not what I said. I keep making point A, and then you keep sort of caricaturing my point.
But the Fox News thing is like, how would I like? Why would I didn't even assume that they would think that it's not Fox News.
But you should.
That's Fox News, like, because that wasn't what the conversation was about.
Recently, Cenk Uygur made an appearance on Mark Lamont-Hill's show, and let's just say things got a little intense. Why? Well, it all started when Cenk Uygur decided to go on a so-called right-wing podcast like the PBD podcast and suggest that maybe the left and the right actually shared some common ground. Crazy idea, right? Apparently, even hinting at the possibility of collaboration between the two sides was enough to send some people into a frenzy, and Mark Lamont-Hill wasn't having it. He grilled Cenk about daring to cross the ideological lines, calling out what he saw as a betrayal to progressive values. Trust me, this one's gonna get heated. Before we dive in, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and help us hit 100 subscribers. Drop a comment with your thoughts. I want to hear what you think about this. Let's jump right in.
That suggests that your behavior is neutral and the framing is what makes it right or wrong. I'm saying that you can actually make different choices on that stage.
So, Mark, then let me ask you back. So, sure. Do you think that as we were talking about populism on both sides and rebelling against the establishment, and that was the theme of it that was supposed to last about 20 minutes, that I should have done a sidewinder and derailed the whole thing by attacking him on his previous quotes about black people?
Not necessarily, no. But again, that's not necessarily the only way to be courageous in that space. That's not the only way to be principled in that space. That's not the only way to do important resistance work in that space. You could pull up an old quote, or you could speak to the bigger system. You could speak to the bigger establishment. It's one thing to give you a concrete example. You sat on that stage and said, we all, the left and the right, we all hate establishment media. Right? We can agree that establishment media needs to go. Everybody claps. That's a great feel-good moment. But again, those people who leave that room, who are the dominant consumers of mainstream media, who are the dominant viewers of mainstream media, and who are controlled by people who are right-wing, they're going to walk away saying, yeah, we got to tear down mainstream media. And they're talking about CNN, and they're talking about MSNBC. Courageous is going on that stage and saying, look, I know y'all don't want to hear this, but Fox News is mainstream media too.
But I have said that on right-wing shows. So you're taking a 20-minute event here.
I'm not saying you've never said it. I'm saying in that we're talking about how to behave in this space, right? I'm sure you've said it a million times, but we're talking about right now how to behave in that space. And when I keep pointing out what you didn't do in that space, you kind of doing the sleight of hand thing where then you talk about what you did somewhere else. I'm saying in this space, to answer your specific question you asked me, which is, should you have torn them down and brought up specific acts of racism or this other thing? I'm saying you don't necessarily have to do that or even make it so personal, right? Because I get how that could be a distraction. What you can do is say, hey, we all want to tear down mainstream media, establishment media. I'm with y'all. But let's be clear. Establishment media isn't just MSNBC and CNN. It's also Fox, which has been the voice of the right for decades now. It's OANN. It's all these things. All of this needs to be torn down. Yes, you could say that.
So, Mark, when I'm on a show like Patrick Bet David in the last 2 hours or 3 hours, we get into that stuff. And that's exactly what I say. Exactly what I say. Okay. So you're taking a 20-minute speech and go, not good enough. You didn't say it there. You didn't say it that one time. Okay. No, that's not what I'm doing. You're misrepresenting my position. My position isn't that in this single instance, you didn't do this one thing in a 20-minute space. My critique is that when you're deploying now a strategy of entering these kinds of rooms and doing these kinds of things, and particularly these very public spectacles, right, which is what conventions are, Democrat, Republican, left, right, whatever. They're all these public spectacles. And I'm saying that there's a significant danger in entering those spaces and not being significantly courageous. This isn't about nitpicking a particular thing you didn't do. This isn't about saying, well, you did 99, but there's the 100 when you missed. You're framing this as if we're nitpicking. And I'm saying, no, the actual logic of the strategy that you're articulating right now about how to move in these rooms, I'm saying is deeply problematic for left wing. I don't even understand what you're saying, Mark. Well, how is it problematic? You keep calling it problematic. Everybody keeps calling it problematic.
I'll tell you why.
Why? Like, they don't need us. Because why do we have this in our head that if we're in the room, okay, then everybody loves Nazis or some weirdo thing like that?
I'm not saying anything. Yeah, I don't know what that.
You're talking about. Like,
so let me answer you directly.
And you kiss their ass, then I see what you're saying. But if you clearly say these are left-wing positions, and you fight for them in the different shows, etc., and you try to get to common grounds where they agree with us. How could that possibly be a bad thing?
Because they're agreeing with you on terms that don't disrupt their actual worldview and won't change their politics. You're asking me,
how do you know that, Mark?
Because you're asking,
you're assuming it, and now I'm not stopped assuming it. It turns out a lot of their voters agree with us on like 40% of things.
Right. So,
we can actually get 40% of things done, really, really important things. But we were too busy calling them white supremacists to ever get there.
Let's talk about that last bit from Cenk Uygur, because this one really shows how crazy things are getting. Cenk goes on the PBD podcast and makes what I think is a pretty reasonable point. He says conservative Republicans and Democrats actually agree on about 40% of topics. And if we really want to move this country forward, we need to start there. Meet in the middle. Have conversations and work on passing bipartisan issues that most Americans can get behind. Sounds logical, right? But then you've got Mark Lamont-Hill being the far-left progressive that he is, completely shutting that idea down. He's basically saying it doesn't matter if there's any agreement because the other 60% is what defines conservatives. To him, Republicans are all Nazis, all racist, and simply not worth working with. And honestly, that attitude is part of the problem. It's the reason we're so divided right now. Instead of focusing on solutions and finding common ground, people like Mark are obsessed with keeping the heat turned up, pushing identity politics and doubling down on this us versus them mentality. It's not about solving problems anymore. It's about destroying the other side. And let's be real, that just doesn't make sense to anyone with common sense. The majority of Americans are tired of the extremes, whether it's the woke agenda or far-right conspiracies. Most people just want results, not endless arguments. So the question is, are we going to keep playing these political games, or are we finally going to have real conversations and start fixing things? What do you think? Is it better to come together and find common ground, or should we dismiss all Democrats and stop the country from moving forward? Drop your thoughts in the comments because I'm curious where you all stand on this.
Again, I don't know why we're still talking about calling them white supremacists. That's a straw man you created a long time ago. I'm not suggesting
it's not a straw man, Mark. You said it many times in the beginning. Anyway, go ahead.
No, hold on. To be clear, I said to you that I believe they're white supremacists. At no point in this conversation did I say you need to go in the room and call them such. In fact, I said I stipulate that I'm not asking you to do that I don't think you should do this. I keep saying that over and over again. This is not about calling them white supremacists. You also said I'm making an assumption. You're making a huge assumption by saying that you know that they're leaving there more open to left-wing positions. There's absolutely no evidence of that. So we're both speculating at that level. I agree that I don't know for sure. You don't know for sure. And unless you have some metric, there's no way to know that when that your appearance there had this impact that you're suggesting it does. Just like I can't prove that it didn't. So I'm saying I'll call that even. My point here, since you don't understand what I'm saying, is to use what you just said. To be clear, if someone walks into that room and they're sitting in the stands listening to you talk, and they already believe that just to use the mainstream media example, they believe that establishment media needs to go, but they also don't think Fox News is establishment media, right? They walk in thinking, get rid of CNN and MSNBC, keep Fox News, right? That's what they're thinking in the stands in this example, right? Because they don't think that's establishment media. Just like to your point, the person on the left is saying, get rid of Fox, keep MSNBC, fine, right? So that person doesn't realize Fox is that. When you sit on that stage and say, yeah, we can all agree to get rid of mainstream media. And Joe Sixpack in the stands claps and says, that's right. Even the lefty guy agrees with me.
So let me
let me just tie a bow on it. He now has even more reinforcement for his position that establishment media needs to go, but he's still never been told that the thing he thinks isn't establishment media, Fox News, isn't. So that's what I'm saying. But now he has more legitimacy to his wrong point because you didn't actually tell him that it's wrong.
No, totally disagree. So, Mark, I can go in the room and have that same exact conversation with Joy Reid, right? And then everybody filled with left-wingers in that case, right? And people walk out thinking, oh, yeah, we got to get rid of Fox News and maybe CNN, but definitely not MSNBC. But that's not my responsibility to go to convince them that, no, you also have to hate MSNBC. Now, I will tell them that if they ask me. I will tell them that in the span of a larger and longer conversation. I will tell the left the same exact thing that I'm telling the right, and I would tell the right the same thing I'm telling the left. So just because we didn't clarify Fox News or OAN in that conversation doesn't mean we shouldn't have that conversation or that it somehow helped Charlie Kirk's nefarious plans. So if his plans are to get rid of establishment media. That's my plans. I hate establishment media. So if you say to me, oh my God, but then if you say, Cenk, then what if they use it to get rid of everything but Fox News? But they didn't do that. That's a wild hypothetical. And if they did, I'd fight them tooth and nail, right? So like, if they do things that we don't agree with, we fight. And so,
all right, let's get into this, because for once I actually have to agree with Cenk Uygur on this one. And trust me, that's not something I say often. But here's the deal. Cenk is making a valid point. When he goes on these conservative platforms, he's not there to deliver the Democrat or liberal perspective in some cookie-cutter, scripted way that people like Lamont-Hill seem to expect. Instead, he's actually trying to have real conversations, find common ground, and maybe, just maybe, help conservatives understand where Democrats are coming from. But apparently, that's not good enough for Mark. He's acting like there's only one way to engage with the other side, by forcing Republicans to denounce Fox News and establishment media, and if you can't get them to think exactly like Democrats 100% of the time, then you failed. And honestly, that's the problem with the modern left. They've become so radicalized that they're basically operating like a political cult, or worse, a terrorist organization. It's agree with us completely or we'll destroy you. There's no room for discussion, no room for compromise, and no interest in finding solutions that actually work for everyone.
That's not that complicated.
Maybe we're talking about
super clear about that, right? But you're assuming what's in their head and what they assumed about what I said.
I'm not assuming what's in
how
their
that
head.
gave strength to Charlie Kirk, but none of those things actually happened. So, like,
well, we don't know what happened. No, again,
Mark,
no. That's misrepresented. We don't know what happened anymore in the sense of what I'm saying than what you're saying. You're almost, one would hear that and think that somehow I'm painting a hypothetical that's unprovable and yours has been demonstrably proven. What I'm saying is, you made an argument in that room that didn't challenge Joe in the stands argument. I just painted a picture of Joe in the stands and his belief on mainstream media, and you didn't really respond to that. I'm saying Joe has no reason to believe that Fox News is establishment media based on what you said on that stage. Do you have a duty to tell him that? I think you do if your goal is to challenge establishment media, to not only challenge establishment media, but to challenge what he thinks is establishment media. If that's not your goal, then that's fine. But then that doesn't advance our interests.
Do you get that? Since I've done that on other shows, but it wasn't part of that 25-minute conversation, that's not a fair standard to hold me to. I didn't debunk every thought that every right winger in the stands had within that 25 minutes, that's a wildly unfair standard.
So I get what you just said, but what you just attributed to me is not what I said. I keep making point A, and then you keep sort of caricaturing my point.
But the Fox News thing is like, why would I didn't even assume that they would think that it's not Fox News.
But you should. That's
Fox News, because that wasn't what the conversation was about, Mark. So you went really deep into that rabbit hole to come up with
No, I used your example. I literally read the transcript and went by the points you made. And again, I didn't say let's go in there and debunk every potential misconception people in the audience has. Again, I make a point, and then you then attribute to me this absurd caricature, and then say I didn't do that, Mark. I didn't give everybody $5,000. I didn't ask you to. What I'm saying is, if you make a point,
so let me understand. All right, do you think I should have specifically made that one point that you're making about Fox News? And then
no, again, you're minimizing what I'm saying. I'm not saying, my issue isn't that you didn't address the single point that Mark Lamont-Hill was saying at this moment. That of all the points in the world to be made, I'm mad that you didn't make mine. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you.
All right, enough of this nonsense. These far-left progressive liberals have some of the worst egos I've ever seen. They honestly believe that just because they can string together a few fancy words, it somehow makes them smart, or what they're saying logical. But let's be real. That couldn't be further from the truth. It doesn't matter what Cenk says or how reasonable he tries to be. Guys like Mark Lamont-Hill will never get it. He's completely obsessed with this Fox News analogy, acting like the only way to fix the country is to make conservatives abandon Fox News entirely. Forget about passing legislation that actually helps people. No. What's important to Mark is making sure Republicans don't watch Fox News anymore. It's absolutely insane. and it shows why working with so many Democrat liberals is starting to look impossible. Let me know your take in the comments below. Do you think there's still hope for cooperation, or are we too far gone? And don't forget to like and subscribe to help us hit 100 subs. This is Anomaly Report. I love you all. Happy New Year, and I'll catch you in the next one.